Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crowdsource Apologetics. I'm Patrick.
I'm Tony.
And today we're kind of stepping back from our book, What About Evil, by Scott Christensen, and we're taking a listener, a viewer, a person that watches podcasts or whatever we call ourselves at that point in time, one of their questions. And so our friend here says, okay, I'm just getting caught up with your podcast. I've been trying to watch every episode from the beginning. Appreciate that.
Wow. Yeah.
Ever since I heard your Bob Murphy interview on his show. Then you can listen to the same one on our show. So that's really cool. And that's really where I first became aware of you, and just listened to episode 59, and you mentioned how Nancy Pearcey says how many churches don't answer hard apologetic questions. So his question is this: so where is a good place to address apologetics in the church? The current setup seems to be, well, if you feel like going deeper, there's a lot of apologists you can study. But what about those people who don't think that they need to go deeper, or those not thinking about it at all? Where do I, as a pastor, deal with that, especially when I myself don't feel particularly equipped to deal with apologetic questions? Because there's hundreds of things we need to address in the church: sound doctrine, exegesis, sanctification, morality, and can feel a little overwhelming to hear, well, and also you need to do this. So coming from a pastor's perspective, but also this is something that could be encouraging for you if you're wanting to start a apologetics ministry in your church, or you encourage the discussion in small groups or with your children or wherever it might be. So we wanted to kind of muddle through this and see if we could provide some of our ideas and see if we can help out with some of this.
Yeah. So let's start with, how do we integrate it, or how do we make it part of, we want to start there?
Yeah.
So the first thing that comes to mind is there's a couple of approaches that one can take. First, you can kind of carve it out and make a special deal out of it, right? This is our apologetic course or whatever. And so go through a number of things. And if you deal, if you decide to do something like that, then, you can, there's two ways to do something like that. You can either find the various passages in the scripture that allows you to walk through Paul, Peter giving the commands, that sort of thing. So scriptures that come to mind, John chapter 4, Jesus and the woman at the well. What a tremendous teaching we get there on how to, deal with someone who has a somewhat different worldview,
right? And
how to bring them along and that sort of thing. A tremendous teaching on apologetics.
I can worship over here.
You
say worship over here.
Yeah,
what do we do?
Yeah. Acts chapter 17, again, Paul on Mars Hill, that's a tremendous opportunity to teach people about worldviews and how those and the approaches and what Paul did and that sort of thing. So we can, make it a separate deal, right? And teach it that way. The second way to do that would be to grab a book. He mentioned Nancy Pearcey's book, right? Or Greg Koukl's book.
Tactics.
Yeah, Tactics. Yeah. So in any of the books like that, if you want to make it a special deal, and then deal with that in Sunday school, or maybe a Wednesday night class or whatever. So what we've been doing in our church is I've been going around the various we call them life groups, but they're adult Sunday school classes, and teaching through Greg Koukl's book and portions of Nancy Pearcey's book. And I call that, the apologetic session. I do that for several weeks, and now everybody's being exposed to those ideas and methods and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's making it a special deal.
Yeah,
right?
I'll shoot it to your elders and lay elders. Yeah, so that's the easiest way. Yeah. Delegate. That's all about delegation.
The other way is just incorporate it and make it part of your preaching and everything else that you're doing. So you're preaching through a passage, it deals with something like this, and now you spend some time talking about, worldview issues or, how to talk to people. So you're preaching through, obviously, I just mentioned Acts chapter 17, but there are others, Job. If you want a good exposition on the problem of evil, take a look at Habakkuk. right? Preach through that. That will give you a tremendous view on the problem of evil, right? And how he attempts to work through those types of issues. Right?
I got encouraged to read Job because of this, and I'm just like, man, those friends were doing good for so long, and then it just crumbled around them. And oh man, like I know Job was going through a lot, but my goodness, do you need 46 chapters to complain, man?
Yeah. So that's one way to try to, how do I get it in? Well, you can make it a special deal and teach it that way, or preach on it, or have a special class on a Wednesday night, or maybe even a Sunday evening, or Sunday school, life group, wherever you call your adult, or even high school teaching. Or you can incorporate it into a sermon series or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So be kind of that traveling apologist, and you can point to our videos as well. If I mean, you're not spending the amount of time that we did on Greg Kokel's book, you're doing like one or two. Kind of hitting the main points. You're kind of introducing the ideas, the main points, and maybe role play within that confines. Or you're saying, what are some of the things that you experience out in the world? Let's talk about that within the confines of this text. So having that set aside and having that sanctification process, because as pastors, as elders, as people that are encouraging people in the church, one of the things that we want, including with sound doctrine, exegesis, sanctification, morality, is going to preach the gospel. And your preaching the gospel isn't a new exposure to people. People kind of know what Christianity is for the most part, and they're going to come at your congregants or you or whoever it might be with certain ideas or questions or responses. And so you kind of collecting those and saying, okay, if someone were to say this about, well, isn't just Jesus one of many gods? That's the process you're already doing of apologetics. It doesn't have to be this great big, from the year 0 to the year 2000, here's how people traditionally held to apologetic views. And I mean, there are good books for that if you want to follow that and everything. But for the most part, the command is to be ready to give an excuse. There's your apologetics for the reason that you have. For the reason that you have. And so that's not that there's no office of apologist. That's everybody. That's the Christian. The Christian is to be ready, and even if you don't, if they don't know the answer, you can
say that, right?
Yeah, right.
It's okay to say I don't know the answer. That's
one of the things that Greg Kokel brought up in his book is, if you don't know,
I can look it up and get back with you, right?
Yeah. Tread on the goodwill. Understand that a lot of times you're not just interacting with, the hard-nosed atheist that is shaking his fist at you and saying, you guys killed more people in the Crusades than anybody. Well, okay. And on the opposite end, too, is that I think we've put these ideas in the background to deal too much with things that we think is important, because people are approaching the Bible and coming to church, and they see, okay, here there's a verse missing in Mark. Where did that verse go? Oh, it's in the bottom. Well, I wonder why it's there. Why is it not included within that? Or in 1 John, I believe it is, there are 3 in heaven that testify: the Father, the blood, and the Spirit. Why is there a note next to that? So the Bibles that are being printed, the study Bibles, address it within there. And so people are probably approaching the Bible that you're studying about, the longer ending of Mark. Do you teach it? Do you not teach it? If you're doing that study, then other people are probably noticing it as well. So, is my pastor going to preach on the longer ending of Mark, or is he going to talk about it? Well, if he doesn't talk about it, do other people know that that there's questions about that? And if they run into somebody out in the world that says, you want me to come to Christianity Explored, where you go over the Gospel of Mark in a kind of 5-week program, they say, well, don't you know the longer ending of Mark? It was thrown all over the Bible, and we know it's not original. So you're equipping your congregants, your fellow church members, whoever you might be in the scenario, with a quick answer for that. So that's part of what you should make part of your study with that is understanding that the questions are already out there. They're already being asked, and especially more now so in the world, you're not, the message of the cross is there. You can kind of formulate it, but it's when you're addressing people from different religious backgrounds or different, people who have understanding that there's no such thing as objective truth. And so if you're not dealing with that within the confines of the church, you are missing part of the whole sound doctrine part of it, as you're rightfully saying the church should address sound doctrine, exegesis, sanctification, morality. That's included in this. So people are coming to it.
So addressing sound doctrine to a certain extent is doing apologetics, right?
Right.
It's especially if you're looking to correct error and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the things too is people that approach this with, I don't really like theology, or I don't really like that philosophy stuff. And I get it. It's the way that it's couched and taught, though. It's okay. Well, you understand, God, the Godhead is a Trinity, right? Well, I mean, how do you approach that subject? And I think we see the lessening of teaching that type of hard subject that people claim not to want to know, and we appeal kind of to the lowest common denominator or the loudest voices that say, I don't want to learn this. And then we have to go for, years within the confines of recent church memory of going, okay, well, there are three gods, right? And it's like the yolk and here's the eggshell. It's like, no, that's actually a heresy. But if we can't go to members and say, okay, can you explain to the Trinity, to become a member of this church without falling into heresy, then I think we're kind of doing a disservice there. And so,
that's a lot to ask.
I mean, yeah.
Can you explain the Trinity in 2 sentences?
I'll give you 3. Yeah. I'll give you 3. Try the Trinity. So I think we've kind of, the American church at least has been teaching like that, and we are seeing the effects of that, and we're seeing the weird stuff coming in and overtaking that. If you were to have somebody like a Joseph Smith come in and say, there's this pantheon of gods out there. We only care about, Father Yahweh here or Jehovah, and we can be like him. Well, okay. I mean, that sounds wrong, but where do I go for that? Can I go through for John 1 and bring out the preexistence of the Son, the triune aspect, the Father existing in equality with the Son? Can I, as normal Christian, understand that? Am I being equipped for that? And so, if you're not going to spend any time in 1 John addressing those things, then slow down some, talk about that. It doesn't have to be this, well, there's a textual variant here, and so we're going to pause for a 2-week message on textual variants. Just incorporate that, start incorporating that into your messages. Or one of the things that you could do is crowdsource it. Hey, I'm going to be teaching on John 1. Elders, deacons, the nerdy kids in the back who I know because they're always bringing me questions that are really hard to answer. Go through this and see, okay, Bill, about textual variants. Go through it and bring me notes about that. Steve, kind of the cult aspect to it. And it doesn't have to be a full-on message on, okay, when approaching Mormons, here's what we do over the course of 3 weeks. We're going to break this down.
Or actually let Bill or Joe or whoever have a teaching session on it.
Yeah,
right? You don't have to do everything yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
delegate it.
Yeah.
But you can incorporate those moments within your message. You can talk about, and Luke here at the cross, Jesus is forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. There's actually a weird textual variant here that is difficult, and you address it because somebody might be exposed to that, and if you're exposing them, it's like how we deal with our children when we teach them in the home setting, right? Are you going to let the world say, well, the homosexuality and transgender movements, they're icky, so I'm just gonna wait until they're exposed to it, and then they'll bring their questions to me. Children aren't probably going to do that. If you address it in a safe setting, in a confined setting, addressing it through the Christian worldview, then you have the leg up. You're able to say, okay, here's both sides. Here's what is going to come to you. Here's how here's the biblical Christian worldview response to it, and you let them ask the questions within that. You're just doing that in a church setting there. But I think we kind of need to stop saying, well, I have a bunch of women. Women don't want theology. Women want practical application. Well, okay, but where is your practical application grounded in? And we see it here in What About Evil book is if we're not grounding it in the character and nature of God, then we're going to get into the philosophical weeds where we might be outside the bounds of Scripture and not really know it because it works or it's really useful or it stops the people from pointing and saying, here's where you made a mistake because you relied too much on God. Well, that's what we're called to do. So I think we kind of need to stop letting people off the hook and start encouraging them to dig deeper and not just have kind of a what about me type approach when they come to church. It should be teaching the whole counsel of God. And one of those things is how to address it to the world. You see Paul going out to the synagogues and then to the streets and then to the learned people as well, addressing the gospel. He had to be ready to explain. The Bereans were ready to open their scriptures up and check Paul. And how many messages once you get to that Berean passage where you're like, we should all be Bereans. Well, this is one of the ways to be Berean is to understand that there are people that say, here's two visions of Paul and they don't make any sense. Well, address it really quick, especially pull in the Greek. Talk about why the Greek is important. Talk about why you're throwing out Greek terms every once in a while. Did you know the word heart here is splanknoid was actually the guts of it. And that's how they referred to it back then, that they thought your feelings reside in your guts. Well, other than, that's a nice story. Why is that important? Because you're bringing in what was thought at the time, what the original audience heard, all these things that you're already doing when you're teaching. You're just bringing in kind of another layer. And I understand, I don't feel particularly equipped to deal with apologetic questions, but you're already doing that within the confines of your study for a pastor. Or if you're getting ready to teach a small group, same thing. Have a pre-question and answer, so you're not having to sit on the hot seat. You're not facing the firing squad. Say, okay, what are some of the common objections you've heard to whatever it is that you're teaching on? Have them write it down, and then take the next class period to address those things. Congratulations, you're doing apologetics.
Yeah. And, so there's a couple reasons why it seems to me anyway that people don't witness as they should, right? Either because they are, mainly it's fear, I think, is one of the main reasons, right? People are afraid that they either will look silly like some crazed, Christian that's out there and that sort of thing, or their fear that somebody might ask them a question that they don't know the answer to, and now they're embarrassed, right? And so, looking as the crazed Christian, sometimes we'll have to do that, right? But having answers, Peter tells us we need to be able to defend our positions, right? And so, the more that we can help people to have answers for their positions and why they hold to them, the more confidence they can have in their witnessing. We're commanded to make disciples. We're commanded to go, right? And so if we can help people to have more confidence that way, then they are more likely to witness to their friends and family and folks that they meet.
Right. Yeah. if you're encouraging people to go out to your own neighborhood. Well, my neighborhood is filled with primarily Muslim men, and I keep getting this question of show me in the Bible where it says that God that Jesus said, "I am God, worship me." That's a very common one. If someone's having that, then obviously as a individual Christian, they should also be seeking out the answer. It's not on the pastor only or the elders only or that church only to do that. But okay, I've heard this question a number of times. Let me do the research. But if you know, like your church, or our church tends to be in area where we're kind of surrounded by Muslim people, and where you might interact with the community, then that's something that we should be able to teach on, and also an encouragement to go and witness. And also that's an important question. Do we believe that Jesus is God? Yes. Can you show that in Scripture? Again, that's what we're always going back to. And then you can kind of break it down and say, okay, why is that being said? Why is that important? You don't need to know, like, Ahmed Deedat, back in the day, he had this question. It stumped Christians forever until the almighty James White came through and preached on the door, on the very place where the Muslim prayers are held, and he struck down that question for all time. Well, no, you're just incorporating that into your teaching and your understanding, who your audience is. It's the same way that Paul wrote his letters. He's addressing the fundamental questions that the people have or are experiencing. I mean, look at 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Hey, you're doing very wrong things, very sexual, immoral things. Here's what not to do, and then here's how the church can come along and help with that. I mean, that's apologetics. Apologetics doesn't have to be this, modus ponens or if then and not everyone
that
has to pull
stuff will help, right? And if you know
nice,
that's good, but it doesn't, But it's really, from my perspective, kind of a branch of theology, really, right? And you're teaching, theological concepts, so that folks understand exactly what they believe. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a means to an end. Apologetics isn't. First of all, if you're wanting to sound smart, it's the Star Wars Episode 1. There's always a bigger fish. No matter how smart you think you are, you're always going to find someone that knows something that you don't, and be humbled by that and expect it and be okay with that. For not living in a shamed culture that we've done away with all shame. We seem to be really bad at saying, I don't know. I don't know. Let me make something up on the spot.
Don't do that.
Right. Yeah. That's heresy. You're not going into to do battle in that way. Your apologetics is there to make you more rounded and grounded. It's looking at things and saying, okay, what is the Christian worldview view of war? When 9/11 happened, why were the churches filled? And then why did they empty afterwards? Why did new atheism rise after 9/11? Why wasn't the church prepared? Or I think back, if you're old enough to understand the Da Vinci Code, there was so many questions. There were main areas in throughout the country where pastors took the time to stop, pause, have to go read that terribly written book. So bad. Oprah, you're the worst thing that happened to Christianity, because you made me read Da Vinci Code, and have to address, well, was Jesus married? Now, that's a very niche idea. It was in a book. I always forget. It's like one body, one blood, something like that. They tried to sue Dan Brown, but lost. And so the church was unable to have answers like, what happened at the Council of Nicaea? Did they throw out the small version of people that said, no, Jesus isn't God. He's just a merry guy, and we walked with him in favor of the might of Rome coming down, and we addressed that in Kostenberger's book,
right.
and that's available too. But in that one, we did it in 4 minutes, so you don't even have to spend that much time. Now you can have a period where you're like, all right, we're going to read Da Vinci Code or the Cliff Notes version and address each and every fallacy within the book. But if you're just going through and you kind of know, okay, what is the world talking about right now, and you're incorporating that into your discussion, we won't be sidelined with things like the gay Christian movement. You can be gay and Christian. You can be, an atheist and a Christian. Canada had a female pastor. There's a contradiction in terms right there, but a female pastor who claims to be an atheist. And so, okay, how is that allowed to happen? Well, clearly you can't save every church, but this is coming from a solid place of wanting to teach the whole counsel of God. And so you're going to have to be dealing with things like critical race theory, and you have to do it without the pizzazz, because that's where you get into critical race theory says that you're all condemned people for slavery, and you should literally whip yourself. Okay, we can talk about those in hyperbolic terms, but if you're not presenting what's the normal person that's you're going to be interacting with, and say, well, why is this the incorrect outlook when it comes to Christianity? Christianity is just a white man's religion. Is it? If it is, okay, let's own it and let's talk about it and let's put it in the proper context. But you're preparing your congregants to go out into the world, and one of those out into the world
face
things
the things that they have to deal with.
Right. Look at Pilgrim's Progress with facing Vanity Fair. That the Christian and his friends had to face this entire onslaught where, if you said, I'm not going to take part in your games, you were going against what they said, and they were condemned to die. And so, that's I think a strong visualization of what is going to happen in the world that your congregants are facing. So, yeah, slow down, crowdsource it. It doesn't always have to be about you. We would say that, would Bart Ehrman be a name if Christians understood textual variants or alleged contradictions? Would he be as popular if? That was one of his rise of popularity, was he's saying what we've never heard before. Did you know the original Testament, the New Testament, wasn't written in English? Oh my goodness, this is crazy. I've never heard such things before. Would Christopher Hitchens be a name if we knew about the Christian worldview and how to answer the challenge that, well, God isn't good? Oh, hold on. What do you mean by good, and by what standard do you derive goodness from? How can you call God not good? Well, here's all these examples. Well, okay, let's take a step back and say, what do you mean by good? And so we're being forced to confront the Bart Ehrmans, the Christopher Hitchens, the Sam Harrises. The world is all an illusion. Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, making Tesla. We love him because he's shooting rockets up into space, going to give us free Wi-Fi. How is he incorrect? And how do we deal with someone who listens to that? Jordan Peterson is a very popular person right now, and he's bringing Jungian philosophy into biblical topics, and he's doing a really good job of bringing people to this, what we're actually going to be covering in chapter 10 of our book here, this kind of meta-narrative of stories and how that feeds into the world. So he identifies himself as a Christian. And so all these people are coming to Christianity through him with this understanding of, well, I don't need to really believe that Jesus rose from the dead. This is kind of just like a meta-narrative story that informs kind of the human condition. It's all about humans here. And we saw this a little bit with Dr. Lydia McGrew when we talked to her about people kind of from our side wanting to build in these, well, they're rearranging things for a holy purpose. Well, there's nothing that says that you have to read a 800-page book to incorporate that into your sermon, and say there are some Christians that believe that John is putting Jesus' death on a Friday because it matches well. It reads well theologically speaking. But here's how we can know it, and because there are other gospels that inform it. And what is the Passover week? What is the Passover meal? Is it one meal, or is it just a normal idea of what the meals were over that week, because it's a special week? So those questions are already out there, and you're just addressing it. Now, you're not going to address everything, right? But you're wanting to hit sound doctrine, exegesis, sanctification, morality, and you're just incorporating those parts because it's already out in the world. People are already facing it, and because we haven't addressed it, we're still reacting. The church used to be out in front of all these things. They used to call things out. The worst thing that we had to deal with, early was, drunkenness and people claiming to be Christians but not really. There wasn't pop-ups of these types of. It was different theologies interacting. Here, different theologies are interacting, but it's human theology that we don't have this shared common value of kind of the Judeo-Christian worldview that brought us into the industrial age, the scientific age, that informed things like the production of different scientific equipments or the looks at the universe. We're just giving that over. Arts and science is being just handed over to the other side, and we get really mad when they come up with weird stuff, and now we have to backpedal and address it. Why aren't we out in front doing that? It's because we've softballed it and said, well, this is somebody else's problem. The apologists can handle this. If you want to know more, see other person. Other person doesn't really follow the sound doctrine that we thought he did. Oh, okay. Or, Rabbi Zacharias, you follow a person, you say, oh, the RBI ministries, that's the way to go. And then something upends it. And then you go, oh, is everything that I knew was a lie? Now you have to address that. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, you're doing apologetics even there.
Yeah. So I don't think it's as hard as sometimes we think it is. It's mainly answering questions, but the basic idea of apologetics comes out of sharing the gospel, right? So for your first approach is always to share the gospel, not to try to convince somebody about a particular apologetic issue, right? Yeah. You share the gospel in a scriptural fashion and let the scriptures do the work for you is the I think the initial thing that you want to do. And then as questions come up, well, you can answer them if you know them. If you don't, then you say you don't and say, but I'll get back with you, and then you get back with the person, right? And so I think sometimes we make it harder than really what it is.
Right. Yeah, and there are just a ton of resources, out there, and good apologetics or things like church history, going through Revived Thought Studios, who we both have read for, and just understanding how many false theological assumptions or just bad teaching is addressed within church history that we're just coming up with clever ideas and names for now to address what was a 4th century heresy that has already been overtaken. Yeah. And so it's you still have to do the work. You can't just go, 4th century, this church council declared it a heresy. Why? Why is the nature of man and God within the body of Christ not a mixture? And why is that important? I think you're already doing that, and by not doing that, I've missed out on a lot and had to play catch up with things like in church history and understanding. Oh, there's a lot of good stuff here. It's not just we're much smarter than people because I have a tablet in front of me. Look at all the things I can access. I can tell you the Greek and what version that whatever manuscript that you want in, but then I can't tell you. Is Jesus the same today as he was when he walked the earth? Okay, well, but does that matter? It does for some people. So Jesus has a body and he's up in heaven right now. What does that mean? And why is that important? Well, the Bible actually addresses that too. And so you're part of this sound doctrine is apologetics. Part of exegesis is apologetics. Part of sanctification and morality is apologetics. We just have to not think of it as a separate entity, but that you're bringing it in, and knowing that there are kind of different areas, contradictions or textual variants or just different worldviews that are out there that you're addressing. You can just address within a couple sentences here or there, and then your nerds of the church can teach it. Yeah, you can point them out if you're in the small church. Steve over there or Patrick over there, he really knows his things, and so then Patrick goes, "Oh, man, I really better know." So okay, I'll crack open the books even more. So hopefully that's been helpful, not just from a pastor perspective, but like I said, if you're thinking of starting your own church teaching, you don't have to do what we do. You can go through what Tony was talking about, of just taking a portion of passage and saying, okay, what's the main idea that the author is deriving here from? Go through Philemon and talk about critical race theory. There it's to talk about slavery. What's being addressed? Where else does Paul talk about slavery and how one should respond? Let's look at the Old Testament and see, is the evil Old Testament just allowing slavery left and right, and there's nothing that could be done, and you could just own whoever you wanted and kill them and leave them in the dirt for your fertilizer, and they're being a good help too? Or is there more to it? And again, how many times have you heard the Old Testament is evil because it allows slavery, and you're just a cult religion? The questions are already out there. Now you have to go and find the answer. And what better place? Like if your children came into you and said, somebody at school was talking about having two moms. Congratulations, you're now in the midst of apologetics. But a church is the place where we can have the safe space, to address those important topics and things that we'll experience out in the world anyways. And so we want to do things within the confines of Scripture with the understanding of a Christian worldview, and presenting not just our side, but the other side too, in an equal light, so that we're not allowing for the politics to froth to the top, and we're actually getting to the true ideas, and understand that, if you interact with someone who has this idea of there's no such thing as objective truth, you might not walk away from that encounter with a good feeling of them understanding you, and here's the reason why. You're already doing that within that scope there too. So okay, hopefully that answers the question. Mm-hmm. And if you would like to get back with us or ask any other questions, feel free to do so in the comment section. I check. Or if you go to caveofthecross.com, you can see the contact there and shoot us an email that way. So thanks for joining us, and we'll continue next time with What About Evil?
See you next time.